Hi, everyone. Sorry for being a bit late, but we had to wait and have more people in the room. Happy International Consultants Day to everyone. We're going to start with, first, we have our chair with us. We have our MC with us, who would be Jan Willem. And we have the launch of our National Consulting Index, okay? So lots of things to do, but also we have lots of time to celebrate with each other. And now I give the mic to our MC, Jan Willem. You handle things from here, my dear.
Okay, everybody. Happy to see you all in our celebrating event, the International Consultants Day. And of course, to start, as in the CMC Global community, we have to start first with giving the floor to our president, Dwight. Dwight, please, if you put on your mic and say some words to our community over here, I would be very pleased.
Thank you very much, Jan Willem. Just a couple of words because my formal message is following, but I do want to wish everyone a happy Consultants Day. It's an amazing time. We've had, all of us in our economies, in our families, in our own professional lives, we've had a difficult year. And to have this time together to celebrate is just amazing. And I think we've shown very well that together as a world community, we are stronger. And together now we can celebrate. So I'll keep this one very brief and thank all of those who have joined us to help us celebrate this day and to launch our National Consulting Index.
Okay, thank you, Dwight. And Rima, and now we have a starting point. We can show all of you a video. It's about 6 minutes long. And after the video, I'll come back to you. But enjoy the video first. Rima, can you put it on screen?
Hi, I'm Dwight Mahalitz, Chair of ICMCI, the International Council of Management Consulting Institutes. On behalf of the Board of Directors of ICMCI, I am delighted to bring you greetings today. This Thursday, July the 4th, we celebrate International Consultants Day. And what a year we have had so far. So let's take a moment now to celebrate the achievements and our mutual collaboration. After 33 years of the establishment of ICMCI, we are the world's leading professional management consulting body. We have 50 institutes around the world who are providing services in their territories, and together with CMCGI, who provides virtual services, we make our services available in every country of the world. We have over 64,000 members. These are all consultants that have signed our code of conduct and ethics and are committed to the profession of management consulting. And beyond that, we have 8,200 certified management consultants. These are colleagues from around the world that have demonstrated to their peers their skills and their knowledge and their ability to deliver successful projects, and that they are committed to their peers to continue to maintain these highest levels of standards. This global network of institutes and peers from around the world has been a huge advantage to our profession. The horrific toll of COVID-19 and the challenges that it brought to us have reinforced the importance of a profession such as ours. Our institutes have worked diligently to support their member management consultants, and we have united as management consulting institutes around the world through our virtual sessions and webinars to share best practices and to learn from each other. The digital transformation that we have embarked on as societies and as a profession has proven that as physical doors close, digital doors open for us. The post-COVID-19 time will be volatile. It will also be transformative. We will continue to collaborate strongly as a global community, and this will provide leadership to our global profession in the new normal, whatever that may be. This will stimulate the opportunity for consultants to earn clients' trust. For us at ICMCI, it has also reinforced the growth mindset as a professional management consulting body. We must keep our focus on welcoming the new entrants into our global industry of professional management consultants. And what better way to become a consultant than affiliating with an institute of your peers? By learning the global standard for the delivery of management consulting services through the ISO 2700 checklist training, and by becoming a certified management consultant to demonstrate to the world your commitment to the highest global standards of management consulting. I am also pleased to announce that on June 4th, International Consultants Day, we will be launching the ICMCI National Consulting Index. This index, the NCI, will provide insights into our markets, the trends, and growth possibilities, and it will provide our institutes with the support they need for planning and for advocacy. I would like to close by wishing all of my colleagues around the world every success for you and for your clients. The coming weeks and months will be challenging. Together, we can find the opportunities to strengthen ourselves, our profession, our clients, our communities, and our economies as we do our good work. So let us celebrate together International Consultants Day 2020 and all that it represents. Thank you and best wishes.
Back to you, Jan Willem. Jan Willem, back to you.
Jan Willem, you need to unmute.
Yeah, back again. Can you hear me? Yeah, perfect. I had a problem, Dwight. I didn't understood by a failing speaker system what your last words were, but I saw you finished. And you announced already the the National Consulting Index, which is the topic we will discuss now. And I see Tamara already smiling, and also in place with a very fine background from Vienna probably. And I see Simon, and all three of you are invited to share with us some of your ideas about the National Consulting Index. So please, who of you will start first? Tamara.
I'll start sharing, but I would like to ask of everyone to please keep muted unless you're the speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan Willem, and thank you, Rima. Happy Consultants Day, everyone. So we all agree that management consultants use their skills and know-how to support clients in all sectors, locally, regionally, and globally. We help clients deal with important issues, handling complexity, achieving sustainable growth, innovating, achieving change, and enhancing productivity. As such, the management consulting industry makes a substantial contribution to the world economy. And I have always wondered, just like many of you, how much that contribution is. In 2018, Simon, Robert, and I, with the support and guidance from ICMCI, embarked on an interesting research project that we called the Consulting Readiness Index. This later became the ICMCI National Consulting Index that we are happy to announce today. The purpose of the NCI is to develop a method for estimating the size of the management consulting sector in any industry, in any country around the world. Simon and Robert will be telling you how we developed the NCI and what it looks like in the next slides. Over to you, Simon.
Tamara, thank you very much. I'm just checking, I've unmuted my mic and just to check that you can hear me. So lovely, that's excellent. So picking up on the story, Rima, if we can go to the next slide, please. I will use 3 diagrams just to give the background to the research. The first background slide relates to some data we got hold of back in 2018, which for 14 countries around the world were some really relatively robust estimates of the management consulting market size. And what we did, we related that to the size of the national economy in each of these 14 countries. So the slide you see on the screen shows for these 14 countries, the gross domestic product as a measure of the size of the economy along the bottom against the size of the management consulting market going up the vertical. And when you look at the correlation, 2 things came out from the analysis. One is they do relate together. There is a sort of relationship between the size of economy and the amount of a management consulting industry there is in the country, which could be a reasonable assumption. But the other and the more interesting aspect was the relationship was not perfect. As you can see from the little blue dots, some blue dots sit above the line, some blue dots sit below the line. So there's a variance in relation that some countries perhaps have a stronger relative consulting market size than others. And that sparked off, as Tamara said, back in 2018, our research project to understand why. So Rima, if we can go to the next slide, please. What we decided to do was to create a project to try and understand why some countries have a stronger relative management consulting sector than others. And myself, Tamara, Robert, and the community of academic fellows, we pulled together 37 factors which we thought would be interesting to have a look at. Now, the 37 factors were reasonable things to think about. So, for example, whether a government spends money on consulting, the number of business schools in the country, the number of MBA graduates in the country, even the number of consultants in the country, the presence of multinational organizations. So 37 factors were put together on the list. And then we started to test them, which meant, could we take these factors and would these factors explain why some management consulting sectors were stronger than others? Now, because we are a global institute, we were only interested in factors that had a worldwide reach. So factors that only played to part of the world or to a continent were irrelevant to us. We were only interested in genuine international factors. And we were only interested in factors that were genuinely valid. So there was a robust underpinning the way that the data had been generated. So if we were to use the factor, we could do so with confidence. We tested 37, and the result of the testing, which was running numerical correlations and data analysis across the 37, came up with 5. And these 5 became the National Consulting Index. Now, the equation sits at the bottom of the slide, but Rima, if we go to the next slide, I'll talk you through what the National Consulting Index comprises. Now, the 5 factors which were shown to correlate with the relative strength of a management consulting sector are on the screen. The first one, it relates to the culture in the country of analysis. And what we determined was that countries which have in the Hofstede ranking a more individualistic culture rather than a collective one are more likely to have a stronger management consulting sector. The next one relates to the freedom of the economy of the country. It's called the Index of Economic Freedom. And what that says, there are sufficient laws in place for people to know how to conduct themselves, but the regulatory burden and the governmental burden isn't strong. In essence, there is a capable open market. The third factor is a United Nations factor called the E-Government Development Index. And that's the degree to which government is enabled by technological method. So you have both openness and transparency and the embracement of technology in the country. And if we think back to Dwight's opening earlier on in our meeting, the comment about the importance of digital was very well demonstrated. The fourth factor is called the Global Creativity Index. And that's a combination of 4 factors. It looks at creativity in a country. It looks at a country's talent pool. It looks at the country's adoption of technology. And importantly, it looks at the country's tolerance of diversity. And when a country scores highly on those 4 things, it is deemed to have a high global creativity index. And the fifth and final one is to do with the degree to which the country is devoid of corruption. It's called the Corruption Perceptions Index. And this is when we look around the world, how some countries are perceived to be more straightforward, more equitable, more transparent in the way they deal. And some countries have situations where culturally or economically they are corrupt. And when the corruptions index is positive, it is more likely to embrace management consulting. So my summary before I hand over to Robert is to say this. The National Consulting Index is a relative measure which accords with the strength in a country of the management consulting sector. And where the NCI is strong, it tends to be because the culture is more individualistic, the economic freedom is higher, so open, transparent markets, technology is enabled, the country is tolerant, is created, has a strong talent pool in the country, and the country is not conceived or perceived as a corrupt one. So that's the basis of the NCI. Now I'm going to hand over to Robert, who will then talk about the practical applications and how we as a collective body can lever value from this piece of research. Robert.
Thank you, Simon. And a warm welcome from my side to all my friends, national and international, and a happy World Consultant Day. And I'm happy to be a part of the team that developed this NCI. I think that's a wonderful tool to show how important management consulting is for a highly developed economy. And we contribute to the GDP, but not only that we contribute by our revenues, it's also that we enable other organizations to be sustainable in their growth and to contribute on them for the GDP, for the national economy. But enough of theory and background. You might be interested in the results. And this is what you see. That's the graph of the results combined with the GDP, the gross domestic product per capita. And what the result in one sentence is from my side is: the wealthier the economy, the better the NCI. You can turn it around. The better the NCI, the wealthier the economy, and that we should be proud of, and we should tell the world. And when you have a look on this slide, you have on the y-axis the GDP. On the upper sector, the more wealthier countries, the wealthiest Switzerland with more than $80,000 GDP per capita, And then there are some countries between 70 and 50,000 US dollars GDP per capita. And then there are the countries below that. And on the x-axis, on the right side, you see the countries with a high NCI, with a high National Consulting Index. So the country with the highest National Consulting Index is New Zealand, with an index more than 0.55, I guess. It's approximately this dimension. And in this sector, I would include also Germany, of course, Ireland, Canada, Sweden, United States. And these countries, they do have an NCI that is equal or higher than 0.3. So this is a group of countries with a very high GDP per capita and a high GDP. And then there is another group that includes Singapore, Austria, Israel, Japan, Italy, South Korea. They also have a high GDP per capita. It might be a little bit lower than 50,000, but they do have some, let me call it, room for improvement with regards to NCI. There are some homework to do, and these countries they significantly can do more for the GDP by enabling the consulting industry to do a better contribution to the GDP. And on the left lower section, these are the countries that have a low GDP and a low NCI. Let me zoom into this section a little bit. Maybe Rima, can you go to the next slide? These are the countries, they have less than 80,000 GDP per capita, and the most of them, they have an NCI less than 0.04. Just to compare to the best, New Zealand 0.55. So that's it's a big difference. South Africa is the only country with a National Consulting Index that is higher than 0.06, and the rest of the countries, they have a very low NCI. Remember, if you go to the next slide, please. So to sum it up, we have three groups of agglomeration. One is the group number one with an average NCI of 0.45, with the highest of 0.55, and an average GDP per capita of 57,000 US dollars. The second group is they have an average NCI of 0.16 and an average capita of 39,000 US dollar. And the third group, their NCI is below 0.1. They have an average GDP per capita of 6,000 US dollars. I know. Okay, here I am again. I know for many countries, these numbers raise a lot of questions, and I know for many countries, we need to discuss in detail what does it mean for their specific situation for the management consulting industry, but also for the economic situation. But I do feel, as I would call it, I do feel cozy with and comfortable with the indexes Simon explained. It's our business that is that needs a proper environment with regards to creativity, of freedom of economy, at the least corruption. Well, we need a good environment to do our services, but it's on us to address the stakeholders in politics and in the economy and build awareness to these general conditions. If we do not, we as ICMCI, but also as the national institutes, if we do not approach them, nobody else would do. So to improve our working conditions, we have a very good report and research that makes it clear and transparent that we need good working conditions. We may and we have to approach different stakeholders and use that as a tool to make management consulting more growing than it is already, and have more management consultants that are able to deliver proper and professional jobs. Rima, may you move on to the next slide? And to sum it up, this is our mission statement from ICMCI. This is what we are established for. And this is what we are celebrating today. And we should celebrate, but keep in mind what's the task we need to do and what's our next tasks we need to fulfill. So that's it from my side. I would like to hand over to Jan Willem.
Thank you very much, Robert.
To moderate the floor.
Yeah, we are now with about 80 people in this meeting, so it's quite a lot. Some basic ground rules, of course. We start first with a kind of Q&A, and there are two possibilities to do this. Robert and Rima will monitor everything that will happen on the chat or by raising hands. And then if you want to ask a question to Simon or Robert or Tamara, that will be fine. And then they can elaborate on that question a little bit, and afterwards we will discuss the use of the tool, the ideas behind the National Consulting Index, etc. So I want to give the floor to the first one who is very eager to ask a question. I saw a question in the chat already. For Nigeria, was it in the test? That's the one I saw in the chat, so I can ask that question first already. Simon, do you know that?
Yes, it is, but Simon knows better.
Simon knows, oh, sorry, I thought it is.
Sorry, I can glance at another computer and just check the data there. So can we pause the question? And Jan Willem, if you can take the next question, I'll flag when I've got an answer.
Okay, would be nice. Anybody in the chat? Questions in what you heard just now? Raise a hand or give a shout. I don't mind. Open up your mic. Dwight.
First of all, thank you very much. That's great information. I think this is an amazing tool for us as a profession, because it is really about how do we raise the level. I'd be really interested in terms of your insights to anyone on the panel about how, in practical terms, how do we use this as a tool with our governments, in our societies to help the country improve itself, or to help our profession improve itself. So I understand about each one of the different components, but sort of, do you have any thoughts about what a general way is of using this as a tool?
If I may answer, I think the easiest way is to approach the different stakeholders in your society, in your country. That most probably there is some relation to the government, to the legal bodies, but also to clients, to other companies, and to discuss the outcome and the reason why is the index on this level. Why is it so good? Why is it not so good? What might be improved? We do have, of course, detailed figures that underline this NCI. We can explain to every country why is your NCI as it is. What is, from our understanding, the screw you need to turn that the environment is getting better. from some countries that might be something about corruption. For other countries, it might be about creativity index. And of course, what does it mean in detail for your country? We need to discuss and we need to elaborate on together. I think it's not a single issue that you do once. It's something that has to be done more frequently. And this is the reason why we publish the National Consulting Index on a yearly basis from now on. So next year, you might see your country has been developed, it's getting better, or it might slip down a little bit. So then there should be something that needs to be discussed. But use it as a tool to approach the stakeholders and discuss it and work together, elaborate together with them. What do we need to do for our society and for our industry?
Okay.
Thank
you
you,
so much.
Just one closing, if I may, Jan William, because I got one really important learning out of that, one of those slides. And that learning is when we come back together in face-to-face groups, our colleagues from Switzerland and Ireland should be buying the beers.
Yes.
That is one of the most important remarks you made in this whole meeting yet.
I have to add here that this answers the question someone was asking: how could consultants in high NCI countries help those in lower NCI countries? Buying the beer.
Buy the beer. Yeah, Simon?
Yes, can I make 3 points, please? Firstly, to amplify what Robert said. Secondly, to respond to the question about Nigeria. And thirdly, to respond to a question in the chat box about causality. So, as Robert said, I think picking up on Dwight's question, it is our duty and responsibility, if you like, to advocate for the conditions which enable consulting to blossom and GDP to blossom. We know from our practice as consulting, of all the 5 factors in the NCI, the hardest one to change is the cultural dimension. So if we get a Hofstede individualistic culture rating of whatever, it'll be generations before that needle moves on the dial. So that's probably the hardest one to shift for a whole host of reasons, and we know that as practical consultants. But the ones where we've got mobility, if we can lobby for the greater development of talent within the country, for the greater adoption of technology, for the greater tolerance of diversity, these are conditions that correlate with stronger consulting markets. If we can lobby for government which is fair but not burdensome, of markets which are open, these are conditions which play to a strong consulting sector. And if we can lobby for behavior which is incorrupt, which is fair and above board, these are conditions that are also favor strong consulting markets. So we've got some degree of ability to talk to stakeholders and know where the conditions can be more favorable. Now, come to the second point, which is Nigeria. And greetings to colleagues and friends from Nigeria.
Listen very carefully.
We ran the NCI calculation for Nigeria. We couldn't complete the full calculation because one data point is currently missing, which is we don't have the CPI, the Corruptions Perceptions Index data for Nigeria. So here's a suggestion and how we might take the NCI forward. Where we work with countries and we don't have the full data set because the data aren't universally available, we within ICMCI can sit down with the IMC and make a reasoned estimate of what that data point might be. Because people in geographies have a good feel for what goes on in a particular country. So my summary about Nigeria is we've got 4 of the 5 data points. We need between ourselves to make a reasonable estimate, and that estimate will then give us a platform to take this forward. Third comment relates to a comment in the chat box about the relationship. What came first, the chicken or the egg? Now, with the NCI, what we are saying is the NCI correlates with these 5 factors. So there is a relationship that you can see mathematically. What we are not asserting is which one comes first. But if we've got a correlation and we are given, as Jan Wenham phrased and as Dwight has phrased, the agency to do something about it, if we know what factors relate to strong consulting markets, and as Robert said, stronger economies, we can lobby and represent those. So the causal relationship is not asserted, but we know the things that work hand in hand with strong economies and strong consulting sectors. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Simon. And if I may relate this to the question in the chat already from Sunil abroad, what is the plan for ICMCI to enhance? Interesting. You said something, Simon, about how we can understand what is going on. Here is a question, and if I combine it with the how can management consultants in high NCIs help those consultants in the low NCIs, like in India? If you combine that, what does it mean for us as a use the NCI in building up our strategy? We are going to have a strategy discussion, of course, because of COVID. Maybe is it something you can shine a light on already a little bit on those two questions? How can ICMCI help countries using NCI instruments in developing a better consulting environment in those countries? Okay. Dwight?
Sorry, Jan Willem.
Yeah?
Robert, would you like to take the lead as a board member first on this? Because I think it relates very much to the ICMCI strategy. Then I can come in if necessary.
Yes, fine. Jan Willem, I'm not sure if I got everything because your mic is cutting off from time to time. But if I understand right, it's
slower.
Maybe it's you're talking too quick. I don't think so. It's a technical issue, I guess. It's not.
Okay. I'm not going to restart my laptop. So that would
no. Okay. Well, for the situation, for this current situation, I think it would be an excellent time to go to the funding organizations in your country, take this report, and go to the funding organizations and tell them what needs to be done and why it is so important now to have good management consulting supporting the economy to come back and return and grow. That's, I think, very, very concrete and very on short. Well, it's not something you should do maybe next year. You should do it in the next weeks or next months. And again, we'll be happy to support you with regards to your individual situation in your country. We need to be aware that this is very, very compiled numbers, and below these compiled numbers, there might be different reasons for exactly this outcome. It might be the corruption, it might be the creativity, it might be something else. And I want to mention something in addition. If you remember these 5 indicators, Simon listed these 5 indicators that are used for calculating the NCI. I don't know if we can show it again, Rima, but if you see these 5 indicators, please, if you have any of these indicators in your personal experience, in your personal working life, and you feel uncomfortable with, please tell me. I doubt, because all these indexes, they address what we do in management consulting. It's individual economic freedom. It's about creativity. It's about the development of the IT, e-government, and we do not like in our work to handle corruption and to be part of a corruption process. All these indicators, they make our life very concrete in our personal business life. They indicate how do we feel in our personal. This is what I wanted to address. This is why I feel very comfortable and cozy in this environment, because if these is not in a good shape. I feel uncomfortable, and we all are threatening by delivering our projects.
Okay, thank you, Robert. That's an interesting start already for discussions in the board for future strategy. But Tamara, I see some of the questions helping each other, individual countries can use the NCI. You, as the leading women in GI, to CMC GI, how can it be of help for you to use the NCI in targeting countries, discussing with countries where consultants work, but there is not an IMC to use?
I lost the last few points, Jan.
How are you going to use it as the chair of GI in using this instrument in targeting countries, making contacts with people in countries to broaden our community?
Definitely. So for those who are not aware yet about what the Global Institute is all about, we're trying with the CMC GI to cover the needs and support management consultants in all countries where national institutes do not exist yet, hoping to create a good number of CMCs in those countries whereby they can form their own national institute. So when we started working on the NCI back in 2018, we were able to pilot at the time it was called the Consulting Readiness Index in some of the countries where GI exists or where we had members and board members. But when I look at it for the future, and when I think that at GI we need to identify which countries we're addressing first, where we're proactively supporting consultants and not just waiting for consultants to knock our doors, would be those with higher NCIs. If we receive interest from consultants in countries with lower NCI rates, then this is where we know that we need to extend support and maybe have those from the higher NCIs provide that support. At GI, we're trying to do a lot of things to share best practice among our members in different countries, because we realize that the maturity of the different countries is different. And I believe that the NCI will be very helpful in that regard.
Okay, thank you so much. There are so many questions in the chat, and probably Rima, you can take care of that. All those questions will be archived and discussed later on. Now, I see a question from Nick Warren. He says, yeah, it gives a correlation in an economic way. Consultants are also other initiatives than economic ones only. Are there graphs available to show correlation with the other NCI components? Simon.
Thank you, and hello, Nick. There are graphs which will need to be developed, and it's an interesting point you raise. The size of a management consulting sector in a country encompasses those consultants who do work for economic gain, and those consultants will be doing work in situations like public service, the charity voluntary sector. So the size of a consulting sector covers all forms of consulting. So the basis of the creation of the NCI looks at the strength of consulting irrespective of the type of consulting that's done. Now, the graphs that Robert presented show one relationship, which is NCI as it relates to GDP per capita. So now we know we have the NCI and we know its 5 components. We can then start to think about how it applies to other areas. One of the areas which I think is particularly interesting is the strength of publicly funded consulting in a sector, in a country. So you raise an important point. The graphs that form part of this presentation at the end of the presentation, which Robert led on, are one way of demonstrating the NCI, and there are others to come. Thank you.
You're on mute, Jan Willem, so I'm going to assist you with a couple of the questions that I believe I can answer. One of the questions is asking about the availability of data for each and if you would receive it. What I'm going to tell you is that we're preparing a report. This report, we're aiming to send it out to everyone next week, which will be part of our newsletter. And in that report, all the numbers that we have will be included. And then you would be able, as countries, to understand, if you're not mentioned in there, that there are some indicators that are lacking, and we are going to work with you on those. There's another question asking about the frequency of the update from Christian, Brazil. And Christian, like Robert mentioned, this is going to be done annually. So we hope, maybe it's a very high target for us, but yes, we're going to do it. And with the commitment of all those on the task force, it will be done annually. Back to you, Jan Willem.
We can't hear you, Jan Willem.
Okay, we can't hear you. Then what I'll do, I'll continue with the questions, if that's okay. And Simon, Tamara, Robert, you tell me who it is who can answer the question, okay? There's a question about how to improve the NCI index for the country. What would be the role of a consultant or consulting firm? I think you guys answered the first part, which is to address the indexes and make sure that they are up to par. But the question about the role of a consultant or consulting firm, maybe you can answer to that. Robert? Simon?
Well, I see.
Would like to? Okay.
I see not a direct, it's more an indirect role of the consulting firm, because when you approach the stakeholders, it's always good to have solutions that can be demonstrated, or some experience in the industry that could be used for establishing funding programs, whatever. That would be good to have direct contact to the practitioners. But first of all, it's a task for us, for ICMCI and for the IMCs.
And there's another question somehow related, and it's about, can ICMCI develop an awareness campaign on the National Consulting Index for dissemination in respective countries? And I believe that is the next step, Robert?
Well, we as ICMCI, we do that on global level, because on global level, like EBRD, United Nations, that is what we address. On the national level, it cannot be done by ICMCI alone. We need the IMCs, and we support the IMCs, we enable the IMCs, but the basic work needs to be done by the IMCs. It cannot be done by ICMCI.
Ali is asking a question that actually, Robert, you kind of tapped on. He's asking, which one is the trigger and which one is the outcome? Does NCI go up and contribute to GDP or vice versa? And I think that's what you said in your presentation, that if this goes up, and the other way around. But please, if you want to say something about that question.
Well, I am a management consultant, and I would say if NCI goes up, GDP goes up. And you have to prove the other side. But as Simon said, it's a chicken and egg issue. I think Simon raised his
Please, Simon, go ahead. Please, Simon.
Yeah, just to endorse two things that Robert has said here. Firstly, it is a correlation. So if we've got agency and control over some of the conditions, as Robert said, we can foster a strengthening of the NCI and a strengthening of the consulting sector. And to come back to the question about the role of the consultant, the individual consultant or the consulting firm in the NCI, as Robert pointed out, the main responsibility is with us as ICMCI and with our national IMCs to create the dialogue, the awareness, the lobbying. Just recognizing a comment in the chat box, we don't have complete control. So we're not going to move all the factors in every country. We know that, we're practical consultants. But the role of the individual consultant is very much a demonstrative leadership one. We know in leadership the most powerful way of leading is to walk the talk. So at a consultant level, we should be demonstrating the behaviors the NCI is talking about. So our firms embrace talent development. Our firms embrace tolerance. Our firms embrace technology, embrace freedom of trading, absence of corruption. And so if we live this, we are creating a reputation for consulting which is incredibly wholesome. That's what I wanted to say.
Isn't that what the CMC is all about, Simon?
It is absolutely on brand and on message.
Okay, everyone get your CMC. There's another question here from Ed. What is the different perceptions of the consultant industry in different countries? And is there a way to use it or integrate it with the NCI? I'm not sure I understand the question. Simon, do you?
It's a lovely question.
Okay, then explain it to me and then answer, please.
Yeah, when we travel around the world, the way that management consulting is viewed in different countries varies. And we tend to look at our own market from our own national vantage points because that's where we have our strongest experience. It would be great if ICMCI could create a perceptual measure and for us to enable that comparison to take place. In some geographies, they have strong economies with consulting being a light touch. In other countries, they have strong economies with consulting being a heavy touch. So, Ed, that is a fantastic question. I haven't seen any global data that plays to the way that consultants are perceived on a comparative international basis. And aren't we well placed to start that as a line of inquiry?
So another project, ICMCI board, you're there.
Great, wouldn't it?
You heard the message. Okay, thank you, Simon. There's another question in here, and it's from Gio, asking, does this index speak to industry sectors in these economies? For example, New Zealand, as an example, what are the main catalyst industries for consultants? For example, government sector or private sector or mining versus technology consulting being behind that high NCI. So is it related to the industry? Please, Simon.
Thank you for the question. And Rima, I'll pick that up on behalf of the panel. The NCI doesn't discriminate between sectors, and here's why. The correlation was based on two pieces of robust data. One is GDP, and a country's gross domestic product brings together every activity that is wealth creating in that country. The second measure was on the strength of the management consulting sector. And the unit of analysis here is management consulting. So it is not legal consulting, it is not medical consulting, it is not other forms of consulting. And management consulting plays in a whole range of different industry sectors itself. So what we're looking at is a macro level thing. So within the country, it is the entire economy and the entire consulting sector. We don't have granular data at this stage to go any deeper and look at it on a sectoral basis. So to answer the question, different countries will have different priorities in their economies, and that is a level of detail below where we are with the NCI.
Thank you, Simon. There are still some questions in the chat box, but we are 2 minutes away from the hour. So may I suggest maybe that after we finish our session, we actually put those questions down to the task force, to Simon, Robert, and Tamara, and we have your emails since you registered to this session, and we can do the Q&A and send you all the answers if that is okay.
Yes, but maybe we can discuss some of the questions in the upcoming Europe meeting, because I see some of the participants are from Europe, and it might be something that would be a good discussion for the hub meeting tomorrow.
Okay, we'll make sure to send those to you today. So back to you, Jan Willem. Is your headset working better now?
Now even the camera is broken.
Exactly. Okay, Dwight, you're our chair, my dear.
Thank you, everyone, for participating. This has been an excellent event. I've been following in the chats and lots of really good discussion there. So we'll make sure we archive that and can refer to it, and it helps all of our thinking. So thanks for helping us celebrate together on International Consultants Day. Just have an amazing rest of your day.
And I want to second that and say thank you to everyone. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for truly celebrating yourselves today. You are part of the economy. Actually, you're builders of economies. And I believe this is where we would come now. This is our role. Other than celebrating ourselves, we should be making sure that this celebration turns into positive results with our economies after all what many countries have gone through with this pandemic. So thank you, everyone. Happy International Consultants Day.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye all.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you so much.